and welcome to Redheads on Romance, the podcast where Lily, that's me, and Holly,
that's me,
review romance novels and Hallmark movies for our own entertainment and hopefully yours too. So join us for a slightly snarky look at the spicy and sentimental side of Happily Ever After. Let's dive in. All right, and welcome back to Redheads on Romance. This week we are talking about the Hating Game movie based on the novel of the same name that if you listened to our last podcast, you are all up to date on that plot. So we aren't going to walk through the entire plot of this movie, but I think we're mostly going to focus on the differences. And I think a good place to start is let's just talk about the casting of The Hating Game, the movie, and what we think about that.
So one interesting thing to note here. So Lucy Hale is playing Lucy Hutton, and I will keep probably getting those names confused because they're almost the same, which is funny. But I thought that they did a great job with that casting. And someone named Robbie Amell was supposed to play Joshua until apparently 11 days, he had some other commitment where he dropped out, and 11 days before filming started, according to Wikipedia, they cast Austin Stowell as Joshua instead. So that's sort of interesting. This movie was filmed in November and December of 2020, so they probably had a lot of pandemic restrictions. It was New York City that they filmed it. And it wasn't released until December of 2021, so a year later. But it was basically straight to video on demand with a couple theaters, so it wasn't really released widely, which why would you even make a movie based on a popular book if you were barely going to put it in the bottom of a Netflix file? So
I will say, I think it's unrated, so maybe that was one of the reasons they could do what they wanted with it, maybe. I don't think it was that crazy as far as the relations or anything like that, but who knows? Holly did pull up a picture of Rami Amell. I think we could describe both the potential male lead and who they eventually casted, Austin Stowell. But yeah, that Robbie Amell, he's a good looking guy. I could really believe that maybe with a little thicker locks going on, he'd be a good Joshua. He's got a really good build there, some nice abs in these pictures.
Yeah, it looks like he maybe has blue eyes, brown. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but he has the very, Hollywood actor, leading man, handsome to everybody kind of a face. I think he would have been good looks wise. And yeah, judging by his body in a couple of pictures I found, I would say much more of what Josh is described like in the book, just totally jacked, completely ripped. Supposed to be a guy that goes to the gym 3 times a day to work out his frustrations. So, I think it's very interesting, especially when we talk a little more about what we thought about the casting, to think what it would have been like with somebody else playing. Do you want to talk about how you felt about that?
Sure. So I guess we could talk about who actually got cast in the role as Joshua, Austin Stowell. To be fair, he's not a bad looking guy. He is pretty fit. He's not as, I'd say, bulky or big or buff as as Robbie, but a good looking guy. I will say, I looked it up. I was trying to determine if in real life, is he maybe gay, bi, straight? I don't know. But in the movie, I get a little bit of a gay vibe, which I don't know why I get that, but it does take me out of it a little bit. But from what I read, he's dated women in the past, so maybe it's just his acting in this movie that I just couldn't buy him with the Lucy character. But Lucy Hale, she actually, I think, starred in Pretty Little Liars, is what she's pretty famously known for. I think she did a great job in this movie. She really carried it. I would say for almost all the other actors in the movie, she really carried this movie.
Totally agree. I love the casting. She's just absolutely beautiful, just gorgeous, like in every angle. I'm like, how does her face look like that? Like, she's just so pretty. So, and she's teeny tiny. I mean, she's 5'2" according to IMDb or some Wikipedia. I don't know. So, her character's 5'0", so they needed somebody tiny, and, he's supposed to be able to just pick her up like she's nothing. And she's just so small, even in, the actual person. Like she carried it off really well, I thought. And then, so for Austin Stowell, I think he's a good looking guy for sure. And, he did the faces pretty well for me. Like, he's scary business guy, and then he's kind of like smirking at her. He kind of had the faces. It was fine. But then his line delivery to me was just awful. It just kicked me right out of like that where you're in the zone watching a movie, just like, oh yeah, this is really happening. Every time it was very jarring to me. He just recited the lines like very strange. It just didn't work for me at all. But then when I found out that he was cast 11 days before filming started, and filming was only 30 days, who knows? Maybe he was looking off camera, reading cue cards for every line, and that's why it sounded so wooden and flat to me. I don't know. But
I think another issue I have with the casting, I just looked up Austin Stowell's age. He's 40 years old. So I guess in 2020, he would have been, 36 about. I think they're supposed to be in their late 20s in the book. And, the whole point is they're playing these kind of silly office games because they're just so attracted to each other and they don't quite know, or she doesn't know. And it's kind of hard for me to believe when I watch the movie that a man that looks his age is playing those kind of dumb games. When you're in your 20s, sure. But when you're in your, mid to late 30s, I feel like you kind of be over that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. They were supposed to be definitely like 27 or whatever. And I think she's currently 36, so maybe 32 filming, and he was 36. But yeah, it kind of took you out of the whole thing. Like you said, he just seems like a person who should be more mature. And I felt like they kind of conveyed it pretty well that he was actually interested in her. But then why would you be acting so stupid like that at work? So,
I mean, can you imagine a 36-year-old man making marks in his planner about what she's wearing and when they fight and when he wants to kiss her? No 36-year-old man's going to do that. 20-something-year-old man's barely going to do that. But 36, that's beyond the realm of possibility in my mind.
And another thing that I noticed was that this movie was very clearly shot in New York, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I guess the book was actually set in Australia. I don't know. The writer is Australian, but I never got any indication that it wasn't supposed to be set in the U.S., although it makes sense if that was what she was writing. But I thought maybe more shrimp on the Barbie would have tipped me off that it was Australian, but it wasn't at all. So they never mention a city. So it's just a little weird that he's driving a car to take her 2 blocks and drop her off at a bar, like in the movie, when nobody in New York City has a car that they drive to work in downtown. So that was a little odd. And then one other casting note I want to mention is Bexley. All wrong. He's supposed to be like this short, fat, huffy, red-faced man that's, I don't know. And they cast somebody that didn't seem like that at all. And then I think you should talk about Danny, because Danny's an important character.
All right. So if you recall, or if you've read the book, or if you recall from our previous podcast, Danny is this other kind of love interest they sort of throw in there to make it a little more complicated. They made Danny way nerdier in this one. At the beginning, I'm kind of for it. I weirdly am like, he seems nice. He's kind of charming and he really likes her and is kind of embarrassed in a nerdy way. I think he progressively gets worse and way nerdier, but the guy himself, if he wasn't acting so aloof throughout, he's actually not a bad looking guy. I'm for him, but yeah, definitely different than how he's portrayed in the book. I also just want to touch on, if you heard my complaints from the last podcast about the whole company structure, where they're these personal assistants to the double CEOs, and they're both in the running for this job for COO, which makes no sense whatsoever. They changed it in the movie, thankfully. I think they realized that made no sense. And now it's just, they don't actually say their titles. They don't say they're necessarily assistants. They do mention at some point that those divisions report up through them. And they changed the job they're going for to some sort of managerial director. Kind of vague, but definitely not COO.
Yeah. So that was one good change. And then Danny, I was not feeling at all. Lily thought, oh yeah, he's kind of cute. I'm kind of feeling that vibe. I was not. I thought it was horrible. I couldn't stand it. I was cringing all over the place. Whereas in the book, you were like, oh, it's this nice guy. He's so cute. And the movie, he just made him so like bumbling and almost like comically over the top cringy. So that was my take on that. Do you want to get into her dream, which I think was the first kind of moment that, you know, it's something really important from the book where they had to really get it right?
Yeah. So if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, there's a point when they're arguing about this job that they're they suddenly want to try to compete against each other for that. Joshua says to Lucy, I'm going to work you so fucking hard. Those are the actual words I think that are said in the book from Joshua to Lucy, because if he gets the job, he ends up her manager. That in the book causes her to have a sensual dream about him, basically rubbing up against her in her bed sheets. In the movie, they change it. He doesn't use such strong language. I think he says something like, I'm going to work you so hard that you're going to be in the office through January, or something to that effect. So it's not quite as vulgar and direct. But in her dream sequence in the movie, she pictures him saying, I'm going to work you so fucking hard. And then she has kind of a quick, brief dream about him rubbing up against her. And this causes her the next day to go into her ridiculously too short dress to work.
And another change they made is when she gets off the elevator in her tiny dress and her super high heels, she falls on her face and drops everything from her bag all over the place. So she kind of ruins the moment of he's supposed to just, be like, take that, buddy, look at me. And instead she just embarrasses herself. But she quickly recovers, and she does tell him about the dream, kind of like the book, where she said, oh, I had a dream about a man from work. And I can't remember exactly how, it was just a little bit like the book. And it's not quite as, I don't know, like a jaw-dropping moment in the movie.
She's definitely not looking to see if he's got a boner going on.
Right, like she did in the book on all the mirrors, which they didn't have all the mirrored desks, floor, ceiling, everything, obviously, in the movie, because that would be weird. So then this is where she says, oh, I have a date tonight at 7. And he's like, oh, yeah, your imaginary date. And she runs down and asks Danny out. And he's like, I can move some things around, because she's like, it can only be tonight. Because he already had plans. So, of course, he changes all his plans so he can go. She comes back upstairs and tells Josh she's got to go to her date. And I think he still thinks she's not meeting anyone, that she's just making this whole thing up. So that's when they get in the elevator and she has him all hot and bothered.
Okay. The famous elevator scene. So in the book, for those of you who don't know or don't remember, there's this very sensual scene where it goes from, Lucy just kind of hates Josh. She thinks Josh hates her, and he stops the elevator and he makes moves on her. And this is where the whole dynamic changes, I think, between them in the book. However, in the movie, they get in the elevator and it's played out very differently. And I'm not quite pleased with a lot of the changes. I think I understand why they're there, but instead of him kind of approaching her aggressively and then laying a big kiss on her, they actually have him kind of talk to her first, like, what are we doing? He stops the elevator, but he's like, what are we doing? What is this game we're constantly playing? And she responds, the game where we hate each other. And then he kind of asks her, is that what you really think of me? You hate me? And they do like a quick stare into each other's eyes. And then she kisses him, which to me, it just doesn't have the same romantic, strong, aggressive vibe as the book. I do appreciate that she didn't think he was going to kill her like in the book. I think that was a bit too much. And I understand with, things like the Me Too movement and, maybe you don't it's in real life, it would be totally terrible for a male coworker to force himself upon you in an elevator. Like, let's be clear, but in the imaginary romance genre world, there's plenty of red flags that we're all for. Like, let's just admit that right now.
Yeah, so they start kissing. I think the kissing was pretty hot. I liked it. He picked her up. They showed like the railing where he's like sitting just like in the book. So it kind of was over pretty fast. And, you know, then he's taking her to the bar to meet her date because her car's still in the shop, of course. And again, this is the weird scene where he's driving her like 2 blocks, even though they're supposedly in like Manhattan, maybe. Drops her off at the bar. She goes to meet Danny. This didn't really hit with me where Danny says, "Oh, you're beautiful." And she runs away crying like the book. I don't know. I felt like it didn't really like make an impact on me. And then she runs into Josh, who's supposedly just bringing her coat or her purse that she forgot in the car.
Yeah, same. I mean, in the book, she's supposed to be really distraught that Danny just tells her she's beautiful like a normal human being would, I think, when you're on a date. In the movie, she's like kind of comments to Josh, like, I think I'm going crazy. Like, you just told me I'm beautiful and I don't know what to do with that kind of. But she just seems too confident and too pretty. I don't really buy it. All right. So I guess after the date with Danny, it ends pretty well. Josh still sends her roses just like in the book to basically apologize for her thinking she's not beautiful, but she doesn't know it's from him. And then at some point we get to the famous paintball scene that is in the book. I think it's fairly similar. She's kind of sick. Oh, except for the actual romance part of the paintball game where Josh is supposed to be protecting her. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, first I thought I'd mention all these people are just wearing their regular winter coats that are probably like $800 to go play paintball and get destroyed with paint. So, and another thing that drives your husband crazy is that they lift up their paintball mask every time they talk to each other, which obviously is just so we can see their faces. But I just thought I'd point that out. But yeah, so she's getting shot at and he kind of just throws himself on top of her. I don't think she was really protecting him at first, which is a big thing that happened in the book.
It also looked so weak. I mean, in the book, they talk about like, you know, the paintballs are just coming and coming and coming like Rambo. And then it's like all this Galantee's in front of her and protecting her and shielding her. And in the movie, it just looks so pathetic. It was like barely anything. And it was like, I don't know. It really didn't have that same romance feel to me.
Yeah, totally agree. It was just like ping, one ball, ping, one ball, where it's like you're definitely getting this like machine gun effect in the book. That's just, I know it's not realistic, but it's just funny. And it makes the scene with them protecting each other more romantic, I guess you could say. So yeah, then we go back to he takes her home because he's like, you're sick, you're burning up. And then she's, you know, home in her apartment, vomiting in the toilet while he holds her hair back. You know, she's got her Sleepy Sora shirt, just like the book. But other than the first scene where she looked a little pale, she's just looking totally fine when she's getting in bed and supposedly like delirious sick. She just looks, her color's fine. She looks perfectly healthy. So that wasn't great. And then everything just moves so fast in a movie when you're used to the book. Like she gets up, her fever's gone. She goes like, get out of my house. Are you going to use this against me and try to make me look weak? And he's like, oh, if that's what you think, blah, blah. And then he basically leaves.
I mean, they still had the like tender moment between them where she's saying he looks like Dennis Quaid and he's laughing at her and she's like, wow, it's nice to see you smile, stuff like that. So they still have the cutesy stuff. They still have his brother come and who's a doctor and tend to her, and you find out about the whole Dr. Josh, you know, he dropped out of med school or something, or at least that all of his family's doctors. And about the wedding, and there's awkwardness there. Again, you don't know why, but Josh hasn't RSVP'd to his brother's wedding. But yeah, she like kind of kicks him out, kind of, but not as rough as in the book. And then she tries to apologize to him at work anyway. Danny walks her up there. It's really awkward encounter with, I guess there's a rose on her desk from Josh, and kind of weird there. You still have the scene in the closet. I think it's a supply closet in the movie between Josh and Lucy where she's like, put your hands on me. And he says, put them on yourself. So they kept that. And he does the whole thing again where, he asks her to go out with Danny and kiss him before he will put another hand or kiss on her.
And this is where his acting was just killing me because he's like, if you come back and say nobody kisses you like I do, then blah blah blah, it just didn't sound right. I don't know, wasn't a fan. But anyways, it's time to leave for the wedding because she says, the whole thing where I'll do anything, I'll come with you to this wedding. So there's this like inexplicably strange innkeeper. I guess they were trying to make it funny, but it just like seemed so like shakes you out of the whole like normal like how the movie was just clicking along. And this innkeeper was being very weird, and we only have one room, not two. So do you want to talk about
yeah, I think it's from me watching it, it looks very obvious to me that they let that guy do a lot of like improv, and he's funny, like I'll give him that, but you almost see the characters, it almost looks like they're trying not to laugh too. They kind of look off and are like, oh man, because he's just saying things like, oh, your room 200 and this, oh, no keys, everything's unlocked, just go. So it's just like ridiculous stuff. And then when they're in this cabin for this wedding, they actually get intimate the night before the wedding, which is different from the book. They're getting ready for the rehearsal dinner. He comes out of the shower with just the towel on, and next thing you know, she's ripping it off. You see his bum, and then they start getting it on. What's different from the book also is prior to this, after she admitted no one kisses her like he does, and she stalked him, she went to his place, and they actually kind of make out a bit, which I think in the books, there's like several of these gatherings at his house, and a lot of the time he's trying to keep her away, like, let's not rush it. But in the movie, they like make out, and then he gets all weird and kicks her out when she's basically begging for sex. He has the strongest self-control ever, I think. Yeah, and this was the part in the book that was like very weird. Like, okay, so if he loves her this much already, supposedly we find out at the end, why is his control this strong? I just don't feel like that's realistic at all. She's coming in like throwing herself at him, and he's like, oh, you're just objectifying me for my body. No, man, I'm sorry. Whatever, if he was into a girl, like, turn her down. I'm sorry. Like, that was my personal feeling of what was wrong with the book. Like, it just bugged me. And then, so they do like one time where she comes over, I guess after her second date with Danny and before the wedding. And he just kicks her out when she is throwing herself at him. And so that only happened the one time. And then strangely, when they go check into their same room and he comes out of the shower with the towel, like, I don't know. There was like no deliberation. It was just, oh, she just spins around and starts kissing him. And he's like, okay, now's the time. Where it's like, what? It just didn't really make all that much sense to me. Yeah. And so after they, have that time together, they start talking, and it's kind of more sweet and intimate. They start kind of sharing their secrets. She asks him about the planner, and she admits about having asked Danny after the fact, and she did have the dream about him. So it's kind of intimate and sweet, but I don't know. I feel like he lost his any main character leading man energy. I felt like it started to really go away for me at the wedding. I mean, I felt like, not that I don't want my male leads in these movies or books to be romantic and lovey-dovey, but he just seemed to change so much instantly. Like, he laughs kind of funny in the scene. I don't know. He just doesn't seem the same strong character at this point for me. Yeah, I would agree with that. And it could be just, he didn't have as much time to learn those lines and really like block out the scenes. I don't know. So the wedding is just a very brief flash of, okay, so it's
December. I guess it's around Christmas time, and they're upstate New York, and it's outdoors. Okay, so everyone is bundled up in hats, gloves, scarves, sitting outside in those little white chairs for an outdoor wedding in winter. I've never heard of this. If anyone has ever heard of this, please tell me, because I've never seen such a thing. The bride is in like a fur coat, stole something, I don't know, like ruins her whole dress and her whole veil. Everything looks wrong. So they just show that for about 2 seconds. And then it's the wedding reception where Lucy really rips into the dad instead of being like another day later.
I think we should talk about first the miscommunication that happens at the wedding where Lucy finds out that Mindy, Patrick's bride, actually dated Joshua for a year. So in the book, when she finds this out, she basically loses her mind. She's like, oh, he's been pretending to be into me. He's just trying to show off to Mindy and everybody. And she kind of has this whole, like, I don't know, crisis about it. In the movie, she's kind of surprised and she goes talks to Joshua about it. And there's no anger here. She's not like that accusatory. But again, here's where he seems a little weaker to me than in the book, because in the book, he does admit she broke up with him, but it comes out later that after he meets her, you know, he was already kind of bored with Mindy. And now he was like totally in love with Lucy after having met her, that like he did not even care that whole breakup happened or anything like that. In the movie, they make it seem like a really big deal to him that Mindy left him for his brother. Like, oh, he's the nice guy and she left me. And he just kind of looks, I don't know, like a dog with his tail between his legs. I don't know. It takes away a lot of the appeal to me. And I think everything in the wedding scene is like that for me. But she doesn't freak out and she's like almost defensive of him. Like, well, that's their problem that they did that to you. And then, yes, the whole tearing down the dad scene, which was a lot more believable to me in the movie.
Yeah, I think they did a good job with that. It seemed pretty realistic. And I agree with you with the you know, oh, actually, I dated this bride for a year. It's almost like Lucy was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like they just kind of walk away hand in hand, like no big. So that was a little weird, a little, you know, if that's the big conflict of the movie, that didn't really land.
Well, I think they changed what the big conflict is of the movie, and we could get to that after the wedding. So, okay, well, so as far as the wedding goes, you know, she tears into the dad. It's a lot more believable. They, whatever, but they drive home. So the wedding's over. They drive home, and here is where they have the big reveal that he basically is in love with her. She's in love with him. And they do the whole scene with, you know, look at the walls in my room. These are the color of your eyes. It's because I've loved you since the day I met you, blah, blah, blah. So this is kind of weird because this is basically the ending of the book. When you get here, they fall in love, they're together. And as Holly pointed out, you didn't have that real conflict at the wedding. So they kind of made a new conflict. It's in the books, but not as extreme. In the books, he does say a line at one point, I won't need help beating her, when he's referring to the job to his boss. In the movie, they make it a lot worse. They make his boss basically telling him this whole thing that, you know, like, if you let her pet the pony, I told you she'd be nicer to you. So it makes it sound like Josh was playing her a bit. So all of this was either made up or just an extensive exaggeration. And then it makes her work harder, I think, to try to land this job. And she basically hates him, I think, for days at this point, because the interview, I don't know if it was like right after they got back.
Yeah, I honestly like almost freaked out about this. I don't know if I was getting tired or what. But yeah, she does. She comes back. They're in like this love bubble. Oh, everything's the greatest. And then she's like, oh, no, you're totally just faking this to like soften me up. So I basically like, you know, she's thinking she won't get the job because she got too invested with him. And now she's going to just double down all her efforts. So they do we go straight to the last scene where it's like decision day and someone's wearing a like Team Lucy shirt and it's all very weird?
Yeah, they have a little montage of her like working hard and Danny's there too. And he's been friend zoned and, you know, he's like helping her with a bunch of the stuff. But it's a little montage and yeah, coworkers are cheering for her and like, you could do it, you know. And this is one of the things I really dislike about the movie, that they changed from the book and I don't know why, and I hate it. At the end, what is good is you find out Lucy gets the job. That's something you don't find out in the book. It's kind of unfulfilling. You never know if she gets it or not. In the movie, they do announce it. I hate how they announce it. Josh is the one to announce it when he's not even involved. He's not on the board making the decision. And you find out he left and got another job and everyone's congratulating him for that. But so why is he announcing it to Lucy? I think that's dumb. But what's worse, which is I almost think is like a sin, is they share a kiss at the end in the office in front of all the people, including the board who just told her she got the job. And it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. And it just ruins it. I was telling Holly when we watched the movie, I can only watch to about like right after the wedding and then I have to stop, like, because I know what's coming and I hate it so much.
Yeah, I love that. It was priceless. You said, just FYI, from this point on, I hate it. I hate everything. I hate it. So there you go. We're probably not the same opinion as everybody else out there, but here, so we always will rate our male star. At least I will. So I would say his face, like I said, was believable to me. He could be a Josh, but his body was not doing it for me. Too skinny. And the way he's described in the book, he's like so gigantic. And so that was just all wrong. I don't know.
I'd say for me, the body wasn't as big of an issue. I think the personality was. I'm okay with a sensitive, caring, romantic character in these things, but I just feel like it somehow got skewed too much and I didn't really believe it between them. Like I said at the beginning, he may or may not be gay in the movie, like is how I viewed it. So I just he wasn't doing it for me.
So I'd say like a thumbs down and a thumb sideways maybe for him. Movie stars out of 5. I feel like I could maybe go 4 stars. It was okay. Like I could watch it to the end. But yeah, having read the book kind of probably ruins it more. So what do you think on stars?
Oh, that's a tough one because I was looking so forward to this movie when I heard it was announced because this book was already one of my favorite books. I think the casting was a little disappointing to me as far as the male lead. And then the ending and how they changed that, I just hate. So it's hard. I'll watch the first part of it. So I don't know if that means it's like a 3-star or a 2-star, but there are parts of it that I like, but a lot of it just, it could have been so much better.
And then I guess we should spicy pepper rate this. I didn't realize it was unrated, but if it was not widely released, they don't tend to give movies, the whatever it's called rating, the PG-13 or R. I would say it would definitely be an R. I don't see why it wouldn't get an R rating. Like it wasn't too much to be R in my opinion. It had a few bad words. It had one sexy time scene and one male bun. And you see a lot worse than that in our movie. So I think spicy pepper would probably be, it's so hard to say for a movie. 3 peppers out of 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more than, I guess, what you'd see on a random TV episode at some point. I mean, not on Netflix these days. I think things are getting spicier, but yeah, it's not the spiciest thing, but not, I wouldn't let my kids watch it.
Agreed. So, it looks like this movie is on Disney Plus. So, you can stream it currently for free if you have Disney Plus. So hopefully you all will take a look if it sounds good to you. And if it doesn't sound good, then you never have to watch it. So thanks for listening.
Thanks. See you next time.